Welcome everybody to the Mind Manifesting Podcast. This is episode 2 with my friend Raj Padalia. Welcome, Raj.
It's a pleasure to have you guys here.
We are going to today get into one of our favorite subjects. Raj, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so we're going to do since we do want to talk about different types of psychedelics, we felt that it would be pretty helpful to get a more general overview of why they would be beneficial, how to use them safely, and what they would feel like, especially to somebody that hasn't ever tried them before.
Mm-hmm. And along with that, we're going to do the usual disclaimers and talk a little bit about how they can be dangerous as well.
Yeah, and then right off the bat, this is for informational purposes only.
Mm-hmm.
Follow local state laws.
Yes, of course. All right, so let's first do get into the set and setting thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that mean, set and setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think they're pretty analogous to set being your mindset going into the experience, all the emotions, thoughts, preconceived notions about what a psychedelic experience is like, or any other types of baggage that you're coming into the experience with, such as, if you just had a baby or if you have a court date coming up, it'd be advisable, not to bring that into the experience, or to, choose another time. And then setting being more the physical environment that you're in, the routines followed during that trip, during that psychedelic experience, and the level of safety and comfort of where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll add into that with, I guess this could be set or setting depending on how you look at it, but the people who you're with can really strongly
100%. That's definitely, I would consider that in setting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just from personal experience, the people that you're with make all the difference, really. And it makes more difference. I believe set and setting actually has more of an effect on how beneficial your experience will be, more so than the dose, and more so than the actual medicine being taken. I believe you can have pretty psychedelic experiences and insights without any substance, with the right set and setting, including the people, the vibe, the environment, and any rituals followed during the experience. I think you can definitely get very psychedelic insights and psychedelic benefits, just based on focusing on setting. So for me, and what I advise other people, it's a huge thing to consider, and it's worth spending more time on, and resources and efforts on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like just in general life, for your happiness, it's like set and setting. You want to set yourself up to feel good and be happy. Get in a place where you can feel good and get your mind into a positive 100%. Mindset. So the psychedelics being amplifiers. The more you take, kind of the more intensely they're going to amplify things. The more those, that set and setting is going to be multiplied for you. So if you don't choose it wisely,
absolutely,
you can get into a strange situation.
Yeah, and especially important to say that they're non-specific amplifiers. So even if you go in with the positive mindset, the medicine does tend to bring up things that you may have buried. So although, in conscious mind and front mind, you may think, oh, I'm going to have a good time here in the woods with my friends, and not realizing you come with so much emotional baggage that you've been burying deep. So really being hyper aware that those things may come up as well. Different things may get amplified, whether you like it or not.
They will indeed. And I like to really frame that for people, because there can be a lot of fear around this idea of having a bad trip. And a really bad
What
trip
exactly
can
what
be,
exactly is a bad trip?
well, let me get into this a little more. So what I wanted to say with that is that uh, the things that come up for you during your psychedelic experience are the things that you need to see.
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
they may well, if you're in a challenging place in your life, it may seem overwhelming and even, you know, horrible or whatever. But there's a lot of lessons to be found in being able to observe what comes up and have faith in your ability to pass through that challenge.
For me, yeah, bad trip is like for me, I like to rephrase it as difficult experience,
Yeah, it's a
right? Or
challenge.
a challenging trip. Yeah, almost like and hopefully with when you follow the right set and setting rules, those difficult journeys tend to be more like a hero, follow like the hero's journey archetype. So there's like, downs and ups, and then a good resolution at the end, conquering the inner dragon, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I'd say like a true bad trip that isn't just kind of a challenge that you need to overcome or see would be like if something like really legitimately objectively bad happens to you while you're in the middle of a psychedelic experience.
yeah, like you getting hurt or seeing somebody get hurt or
Yeah,
um, your
like
car breaking down or something like, something not good like that.
yeah, so those are the worst trip stories I've heard have been about like something really bad happening. Uh, and this comes back to set and setting. Like I had um I don't even know if I want to tell that story because it was kind of
Yeah, I wouldn't worry
it's a
about it,
little
but
bit, it's really intense, but I guess the moral of that story
yeah,
is like is is like really understanding how to keep yourself physically safe during
hopefully
your journey.
hopefully whoever you're talking about is okay, but it's just good to you have to mitigate the risk factors, right? So like make it the lowest chance possible of somebody getting hurt or something bad going wrong. So I like to be in very protective, controlled environments, one where I can really like feel comfortable in for sure, even when I'm out of my mind. Um, it then just reduces the paranoia that's bound to come up. Otherwise, when you take it in a bad situation, which I've done many times, where I didn't prepare the environment enough, and you get this paranoia, and then that just ruins the experience. And again, that paranoia gets amplified. Um, so yeah, I when it comes to good set and settings, for me personally, I think a trip sitter is very good. Somebody that's not on the medicine or substance,
Someone who
and
you trust.
somebody who you trust. Yeah, there's lots of people with negative intentions, of course. Um, and generally, I like having them in another room. Um, since I'm more experienced, I do enjoy taking the medicine alone. That's probably what I do 99% of the time. Um, but when done in groups, it's always good to have somebody there that can handle things.
Yeah, it's good to have a control. Yeah, a
Yeah,
spirit guide, I
especially
like to
as you
call
let
them.
go. As you let go, because psychedelic experience is all about letting go. Um, and then if you are trying to control not only the environment, but a lot of people get stuck here. And this is actually what triggers a lot of bad trips, is they try to control the internal environment. They try to control the medicine itself. They try to like, how like when you have a few beers, you can kind of like muster the energy to kind of hide it. You know what I mean? You can't do that with the psychedelic, and it's quite a humbling experience. One drop of something can overwhelm and overtake you to such an extent where you can't just like not trip for a few minutes if you have a phone call, it's
Yeah,
you can't just turn it off.
depending on
you're
the
you're
dosage.
in it. Yeah, depending on the dosage for sure. And the higher the dose, the more it's important that one has to completely let go listen to the medicine, and not try to control or suppress what the medicine is doing, because the more you try to resist, the more discomfort will arise. And that's
Mhm.
where bad trips go really south, when people try to fight it even harder, and it becomes like a negative snowball effect.
Yeah,
um,
it's a
so it's really
cycle.
important just to breathe and let go.
Breathe and let go. Amen. Yeah, a lot of people create their own bad trips with that type of looping paranoia. And so if you get into that state and you're all by yourself, it can be really hard to pull yourself out of it. So like you were saying with the breathing, if you have like a breath work meditation practice, that can be really helpful. The other thing I like to use is mantras, because you just get yourself going in this loop, and it can be very
That's
calming.
something I have less experience with, but I can see why when I've used it without the medicine mantras, but not
Mm.
as much as I probably should do. But I do recall one experience where I felt compelled to almost yell this mantra out. And I was yelling it out, I was home alone, and then it it just like I began to stretch out the harmonics of each syllable,
Hmm.
to the point where I was like pretty much like Mongolian throat singing. Um, it was very interesting, very, very
Oh,
interesting. It was really therapeutic actually. Um,
cool.
uh, but yeah, that's something to consider. Is actually just the just a few weeks ago, I had this one experience where we did breath work in the beginning of a group session. So we spent the first half hour of the experience. And for context, these experiences are 6 hours long, and we'll get into that a little bit on average, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the we spent the first half hour of it doing a breath work, and that really helped tune ourselves, um, really helped tune our body, calm things down, refocus our intention. And we usually go into these experiences with a piece of paper where we list out, we do this, a week in advance, where we list out what we want to focus on, any problems going on, anything good in our life that we want to focus on or appreciate. Um, and we kind of, mentally meditate on those things as we go through the experience and before the experience. I think that's been very helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's a super important point. So I'll highlight that the previous one, which is like surrender. So you're having faith that you're
That's
coming
huge.
into this experience, right? It's like
Yeah.
you bought the ticket for the ride, you're on the
The
roller
medicine's
coaster
not going to
already.
hurt you. Whatever,
Don't
like
fight
when people have
it.
like bad stuff or things they want to fight during an experience, it's usually it's always things that are within them, right? The medicine doesn't bring anything to you that's not already inside of you. And that's
Yeah.
really important to consider. And just for reference, we're referring to just general psychedelics right now, at least in this conversation, pretty much like LSD and psilocybin. Um, but we want to make sure that we trust the medicine. And that also adds to that level of paranoia where like, oh my God, what did I take? Like I remember I mentioned in the previous episode, the first time I did the LSD, there was a few hours in, we were all outside trying to spit it out, you know? We have to really be mindful that, what you're getting yourself into for sure.
Mhm.
That's where I think having a guide helps, somebody that's very experienced being there with you. Um, or at least if that's not available, at least using online guides and resources, um, different books and lectures and things like that to help.
Yeah, I like to use the metaphor of it's like you're going off into the wilderness, and the first time or the first couple times, maybe the first many times you go, it's going to make sense to have a guide to show you around. And as you become more and more comfortable in your body and with your nature skills, you can start to go exploring by yourself, and understanding that at that time you are now completely self-reliant on your own abilities to come through that experience. And I think
Yeah.
that's a very empowering mindset when you take
How
that.
many trips do you think that takes? I think it takes 3.
I think it's very individual. Like it depends on your temperament, you know.
Hmm. That's
Like
true. That's
some people
actually
can
really
go
true.
right into that first
Yeah.
thing.
People usually do ask me that a lot. And I usually say like the first 3 times trip with somebody, hopefully the same guide all 3 times, and like really get a feel for what it's like before venturing off on your own. Um, and then, of course, starting light doses and then working your way up.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the worst things you can do is take a massive dose the first time and just not be prepared at
People do
all.
that all the time. People do that all the time, at music
Yeah,
festivals and stuff. I
yeah,
see people
totally.
taking like acid or shrooms for the first time, and it's like, whoa, this is a weird first place to take this in public. Do not recommend.
Yeah, music festival can go really well or really poorly or anything in between, but you wanna really have your
I tend
bearings,
to err on the side that it'll go kind of poorly for the first time. I don't know.
I'm
I don't
a
think that would have been a good time for me if I took it the
yeah,
first time in
I would say
public.
I'm a veteran at that, so
Yeah,
I've
at this
I've
point,
navigated through it safely.
that's where I would thrive there at this point, that's like a psychedelic playground actually at this
It
point. But
is. Yeah.
for the first time, maybe not.
No,
Um,
no, definitely not. I mean, I
yeah,
think it's more about like, is it an environment that you feel comfortable and safe in, you know?
yeah, just
Because
generally, do you
for
feel
some
comfortable and
people,
safe
like
there? Yeah.
they know music festivals, they may even know that music festival specifically, and it's a place where
Yeah,
they feel happy and good. For
that
other
makes
people, it
sense.
might just feel
Yeah.
like, whoa, what are all these
Yeah.
crazy people doing? You
That's
know?
why I like if you're gonna do it outside, a very familiar place, right? I tend to recommend, and me personally, 99% of the time, and I know this is pretty blasphemous, I do it um, inside a closed room, like 99% of the time. I do enjoy doing it outside, but we didn't get into this yet, but I consider that there's like a split between therapeutic use and recreational use.
Hmm.
And I think both are great and they both have their place. I hold them to equal value, actually. There's nothing wrong with having fun. Although that's not what I usually use it for. I usually do use it for, or at least I use it for half and half. But for me, I get far more therapeutic use when I'm doing it indoors, and especially with one other person or alone.
Hmm. Yeah, I think with indoors especially, it makes sense to do it alone because
Yeah,
you're
and
like
it feels
you're
way more safe
safer
too,
and it's an internal journey at that point.
which is really important. Which we can even dive into actually, which is what do these things even feel like for somebody that hasn't ever tried like LSD or shrooms? How would you describe it? Then I'll explain how I would just describe it. Just to give some context for listeners that are still on the fence or just plan to take it, but just want to know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, totally. So I'll get into that, but I also wanted to just kind of wrap up one of those points that you said earlier, which is that like really the most important thing with if you're deciding to take a psychedelic, what I consider to be the most important thing is your intention. Why are you doing
Yeah.
this? What are you seeking? And the more clear you can be about that intention, the more directly these substances are going to tend to provide you with answers.
Yeah. I do believe we all have this like moral internal compass, right? And then if you ask yourself why you want to take this, whether it's to get fucked up in the club or whether it's to, solve some internal issue or build
Cool.
some appreciation or gratitude or love for some certain thing, or it's the club, right? And there's people on all sides of that spectrum that have taken psychedelics for the first time. And I think intention is, if you just ask yourself, like, okay, then you answer, like, yeah, I just want to get fucked up. You should ask yourself why, and keep going down that rabbit hole. And eventually you'll come to a place where you realize that you're using this as a distraction from something that's going on, right? Um, so I always say, just listen to your heart to find what that true intention is. It's not really something that anybody can really tell you, but just whatever you think your intention is, just ask yourself why, and just keep going down that thread, and then you'll like find a good answer. You can focus on that during the trip, and you'll have a very good time.
Hmm. Yeah, something to come back to. So
Absolutely, something to
what
anchor
kind of
yourself
like
on.
goes
Yeah,
along with that is just like have a plan and a structure, you know, just it could be really loose or it could be really tight, but I know like some of the more challenging trips I've had have been like group intentions not being in alignment, or just kind of like a feeling of being lost, not knowing where to go, and being on a psychedelic can be pretty
yeah,
challenging.
I've been in both of those situations myself as well. Being in a group that's not all on the same vibe, don't have all the same intentions, have different agendas, right? Everybody's coming in with their own agenda. And that's something that's really important, I think, especially when doing it with one or more other people, is making sure everybody has a similar agenda,
Hmm.
that everybody can default to some sort of, I like having a loose schedule. I take it a little bit more um, like I kind of gamify the experience a little bit, where I break down what I'm gonna do each hour and try to follow that as close as I can, just to leverage more benefit from the medicine. But I do think it's important that everybody agrees on at least a loose schedule. Everybody gives each other space and freedom. Like one thing I did on a recent group journey that I haven't done before, that I now wish I did, was having time set out for everybody to be alone, for and having options for everybody to have their own audio input, right? Have their own
Hmm.
music. You can't have just one person doing the playlist and one other person not jiving to it. Dude, I would hate to be in a room where I didn't like the music. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to give everybody space and not take it personally when you just want to listen to your own headphones. I think that's something we did. We all had separate headphones. We did end up listening to the same playlist, which I'll include in the show notes. But um, there was we did give everybody the option and freedom, and not to feel like weird about it if you had to go in a room alone, or put on your own headphones. I think that's really important and actually quite more freeing, which is why I enjoy doing it alone in the first place, is because of that freedom to do and listen to what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super important. Bad music or unpleasant sounds, and bad subjectively, of course, but bad music, uh, music that you don't like, can really make you feel weird or bad, and it's very multiplied by the psychedelic.
Yeah, somebody just
Definitely
needs
had
to
that
take control.
experience a bunch.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't work if everybody has that different agenda. So like, to me, my favorite like agenda that everybody should have is maximize your like intention list going into the experience and help others do the same. So like give everybody the space to kind of have their own experience within a confined, like regulated environment. Um, this way people can let loose but still be safe.
Mhm. Let's see, I feel like
Yeah, if I feel like if we missed anything, we'll go back to it. But um, we can now dive into the what substances we're even talking about and
oh yeah,
what they would feel like,
I
for sure.
remember what I was gonna say. So yeah, I think when it comes down to it, what it really is it's an exploration of your own consciousness.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they really are.
And so I think that's why like spending time with people who you love and having that group experience is great. But what you said, like having that time to go into your self-reflection and to retreat from the group is so important. And I think people have challenging times sometimes because the group has just said we're all going to stay together, we need to stay together, otherwise something bad could happen. That was like the high school mindset that we had. It was like if we split up, it was going to be really bad, you know.
I had that mindset until recently, actually, where I liked everybody being together because it kept us on the same frequency, right? We often found that when somebody left the group and then came back, they were on a different frequency.
Hmm.
But now these days I've quite changed that and more evolved into a thinking where um everybody just kind of have their own like experience.
Yeah, it's like
um
group intentions and individual
I
intentions,
think it
making
also
sure they're
depends
in
on like,
alignment.
I think when being done recreationally, like going on a kayaking trip or something, it's good to have, or a hike or something like that. I think it's good to have everybody on the same frequency, um, similar dose, similar intentions, keep them together. But when done therapeutically, people should be left like kind of alone a little bit, at least
Yeah,
for part of the trip.
it's all about the intentions. And yeah, I feel like out in the wilderness, like it could actually be dangerous for somebody to go off on their own, you know, like depending on the
Yeah,
circumstance.
I didn't even consider that aspect of it. Mine was just like totally being on the same like frequency of conversation and thoughts. But yeah, that makes sense too. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done it in really a wide variety of circumstances. And I think I wouldn't specifically recommend a lot of the pathways that I've chosen, uh, because they're a little more on the dangerous side of things. And we're gonna get more into what exactly that means in future episodes. We're kind of going for the general overview at the moment.
Yeah.
So how does it feel, Raj?
Yeah. I mean, people ask me this question all the time, Alec. They ask me, what it's going to feel like. And I usually give a very similar answer, which is think of it this way. Imagine how a baby or a young child sees the world. They see it with fresh eyes. They see it with a very unique type of curiosity, a very intense curiosity, right? They look at some object and they're, really mesmerized by it, just a mundane object, like a pencil, for example. Like I spent trips just staring and amazed by a pen or a pencil, just going down everything becomes quite beautiful and complex and interesting, and it can take you on a quite a beautiful journey of thought and appreciation, just the everyday mundane things. But it's like somebody replaced your eyes with a child's eyes, a very curious, innocent child eyes, and you can look at your external environment like, oh, dude, look at the pretty colors, man. Or you can, appreciate beauty in everyday objects and environment around you or people around you. For more therapeutic use, what you could do is you could turn those eyeballs inwards, right? And you could look at your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own past, your own traumas, your own accomplishments, your own memories, and your own physical body, and really um, get deep into looking at those things from another perspective, right? Very, it's not perspective enhancing because that's assuming it's taking your own perspective and enhancing it. I think it's like giving you a whole other new perspective that you haven't even considered, that you still have the power to do, but usually your brain isn't wired for that because, on a neurochemical level, um, different parts of your brain are being lit up at different times than usual, and different parts of the brain are communicating with other regions of the brain that aren't usually communicating. So it brings you a very unique headspace that will only last a few hours, and that's not usually there or accessible in everyday waking consciousness.
Mhm.
So I do tell people that, hey, you're gonna look at you know how easy it is to give a friend advice, um, but when you try to give yourself advice, is kind of difficult. Um, this kind of allows you to step outside of yourself and to give yourself wise advice.
Mm.
So that's kind of how it feels from like a thinking perspective. It gives you different layers of thoughts. Um, Interestingly, I find that the thoughts and feelings are generally gravitating towards love and kindness, right? If love and kindness can be like a central sphere of yourself, of your own core, of your own being, And the psychedelics do help enhance that, or try to at least bring you towards that internal love and kindness. It's almost like it's pre-programmed into the substance, interestingly enough.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I'll get into what it may feel like physically. On LSD, not a whole lot much, but maybe a little bit decreased um, fine motor control, but with practice you can override that. And in fact, I find the opposite, which I'll get into later. But and on shrooms, yeah, you're definitely going to have a little bit of a drunk walk, is what I find,
Yeah, especially a higher
or a
dose
couch
of
lock.
mushroom.
Couch lock. Yeah, you'll be couch locked for sure, or you'll feel the urge to lay down. Yeah,
Yeah, sometimes that can be the safest thing to do. I do think
yeah,
I mean, LSD does have some very physical sensations, but I'm having a hard time actually thinking about how to describe them. I mean, one way
yeah,
I feel like one way to think about it is it's kind of like your body is really like has energy coursing through it. It's like
yeah.
feel
Actually, I
very
was,
like vital and alive and
yeah,
awake.
yeah, 100%. And here's what I think is happening, just from my anatomy background, from studying in school, is the I feel very in tune with my neurology, right? My peripheral nerves become very sensitive, where I am almost feeling electrical currents through muscles, and that's can explain that awake feeling. Like
Mm,
I feel like there is an increase in motor control, down to the specific muscular fiber, right? This is why I actually think that LSD is like a performance enhancer, can be used as one in sports, because I feel hyper flexible on LSD. I feel I can do things that I normally can't do in terms of reflexes, in terms of aim, like in coordination, like playing darts, for example, on LSD. This is pretty interesting. I would get bullseye for bullseye. Playing,
mm.
you know, pong, right? For example, is like beer pong. I would get cup for cup, without fail. So like, there's definitely an increased coordination that's involved. And
Up to a
working
certain
out, for
level, yeah.
example, I've done a lot of just for my own curiosity, I've done a lot of working out under the influence of LSD, and I find that I'm able to recruit different muscle fibers and um, get more of a pump, which I find really fascinating. Like, I don't think that's ever been studied, but that's definitely something that should be studied. I think there's definitely something to that. Um, where there's actually this one experiment that I think Dr. Joe Dispenza did, where he had participants think about working out, and the group that the variable group that just thought about working out did get muscular gains compared to the control group that wasn't thinking about that. So I do think that LSD does enhance that. For
Mm.
example, I've never tried on shrooms. I never felt the urge to work out. I actually don't. I actually don't like to move on it. I just like chilling.
Interesting. Yeah, I found LSD to be much more conducive for the sports, and then mushrooms is more
100%.
uh, like a
And you've had a lot of
hiking.
experience that I'd love to hear about your experience, within sports and LSD.
Yeah, so
We can even devote a whole episode to it, actually.
I have a ton of stories about that, so we'll have plenty of
Yeah, we'll
time to
just go
get
over a
into it.
general
But
overview for sure then.
I so I'll just give a general overview of that experience with it, which is that I've been an adventure sports athlete for a long time, and I reached a fairly high level of proficiency with the sports that I was doing, and I was also very familiar with the psychedelics. So I I would not even consider trying it if you haven't done both of those things. It's
Agreed.
very clearly dangerous. Like you could kill yourself doing that. A lot of the things that I did. But it was kind of getting back to that idea of like really having faith in yourself, like really believing in your capabilities and understanding that um, you are the solution to your problems. All the any problem that you might have, you are the solution to it. And also, so when you get into like a mountain environment specifically, that becomes very direct. It's like the capabilities of your body are the only thing that can take you from where you are to where you need to go, right? So
Mm,
I found that experience to be like really, really powerful, really empowering, and just incredible with the right amount of LSD. But again, you're going out into the wilderness alone. You could die. It
mm.
gets serious when you start to do that. So it's a tremendous amount of faith in yourself, and also really knowing the medicine and how much you can take, and still be able to like see clearly and think clearly enough to do something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And like this is where experience comes into play as well. Where we did go over like some of the mental effects, some of the physical effects, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would describe the visual effects and auditory
Mhm.
effects.
Yeah, so I wanted to also highlight it's the childlike wonder, I think, is one of the most marvelous
Yeah,
things.
that's the biggest theme of it. Yes.
Yeah, it's like if you can tap into that and really enjoy that, I think it's like absolutely one of the most powerful gifts that
Yeah.
you can get from a
I've had
psychedelic
the most
experience.
fun just walking 10 feet from this side of the room to the other, which you can't say that, sober. So there's something to that.
Yeah, although I do think part of the message is that you can tap
Yeah,
into
is that you
that
can tap into
mindset.
this later. Yeah, once
Yeah.
the door was opened, I'm now able to enjoy life with this same childlike wonder. Like that doesn't go away. That window is open during the psychedelic experience, and then you can cultivate it, use that as an opening, get your foot in the door, for example. You can retain this childlike wonder in your entire life, which I think
Hmm.
I've definitely done a good job of that. And so have you.
Yeah, play is a very important part of my life for sure.
Yeah.
But there is something there, like that's all well and good, but there is something like special and unique about going on a psychedelic adventure that you can't really replicate just by having a childlike wonder attitude. Like there's something
Yeah.
different. There's something that's very
Yeah.
qualitatively different about the two
It's
experiences.
it's like a childlike wonder on steroids. Like it's really powerful childlike wonder.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
it's definitely the back to that
It's
idea of
stuff
it
you
being
wouldn't
an
consider.
amplifier.
Yeah, stuff you wouldn't consider for sure. Yes.
So what was it? I forgot. What was your question?
Yeah, what does it look like visually?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so this is very dependent on dosage. Let's get into the mushrooms first. I would say that at a small medium dose of magic mushrooms, let's say, um, well, yeah, so small medium, say zero 0.5 to 1.5 grams, you're gonna have just a little bit of of shine to the world, maybe the enhanced visual acuity, maybe like a slight bit of movement, or like I said, like it's like a shine that you see. But everything is going to look pretty much the way it usually does. I would say you get more of the internal perspective shift at that
There's
dose.
no dragons,
There's no
no flying
dragons,
dragons.
no
Yes.
unicorns,
It's
no
not the
pink
way Hollywood
elephants.
describes it.
Unless there's actually a unicorn, then it'll be
You're not
shiny.
going to see anything that's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, what you're seeing is
You
you're
may
seeing extra
think things that
details on
aren't
what's
there
there.
though. You can mentally hallucinate
Yes, yes,
and
yes. You can
create
use your
circumstances
imagination.
that
You can
may or may
transpose
not.
your imagination on it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
you can create circumstances that may or may not be there. But as you get into a higher dose, say like two to 3.5 grams or so, then the world really does start to look different. And I consider it to be like the world is really like breathing and glowing. All the colors are super vibrant, super intense. I feel
Super
like you can see
HD.
the spirit of things.
Yeah.
That's how I consider it to be. And people too, like you can really like read into a person's energy field. The higher the dose you get, the more you can like really clearly see into their emotional landscape, which I think is a fascinating ability to have. And I would say
Agreed.
we all
Agreed.
have that to a certain extent
Yeah.
anyway.
It's very much enhanced on psychedelics. I've had the same experience.
Yeah, it's like not only, yeah, it's visually expressed. Like the higher dose you have, the more you can actually visually see somebody's aura or their energetic field. And so yeah, so and that'll last for like 4 to 6 hours. The world will be very physically different, and things, there's a lot more like moving and breathing with mushrooms at that dose. Once you go beyond that, you can really start to leave your body and do things like time travel, and yeah, like have a total out of body experience. So we're talking like five to say 7. I think the most I've taken is around 7 grams. So I can't speak
It's a
to
hero's journey.
what is beyond that.
That is a hero's journey.
But at that point, it was a complete out of body experience for many hours. And I time traveled, and what I mean by time travel is I felt like I was visiting different points in history with my spirit, and specifically visiting different historical figures, my artistic mentors from the past. So I went to see Leonardo da Vinci and MC Escher and Salvador Dali, as well as my present day artistic mentors, people who are still alive, who I've learned from and who I look up to, like Amanda Sage and Android Jones, David Heskin and Gloria Weaver, Alex Gray. These are people who I took classes with, so they're kind of like, their artistic mentorship was with me in spirit at that time. But it was really interesting to visit those people from the past and kind of get their perspective about what was going on and what I needed to do to progress forward. So we're going to go deeper into those trips in future episodes. But that was my experience with the very high dose, was that it was almost like an out of body life review as well. Like I saw myself and how I was being in the world, how I'm interacting with everybody. And then I also saw all of my relationships, like who are these people and what do they mean to you? How are you treating each other? And how are you connected? And yeah, it was really, really fascinating to see that perspective.
Wow.
That dose was like a very, very spiritual, very ineffable experience. Like those are the notes that I brought back from it, but there was so much more that I couldn't possibly put into words, because there's nothing in day-to-day life that really compares to what you're actually going through once you take it to that level. And this is the wild thing about mushrooms, is that there are so many different layers with it, and it can be like such a grounded, like earthly sensual experience, and it can be so cosmic, out of body, time travel, just depending on how many you take. And also I'll add to that, like with the mushrooms, what is in your stomach beforehand really makes a difference as to what the effects are going to be. So if you want to have stronger effects, you want to have a relatively empty stomach. More food you have in your stomach, the less mushrooms are going to take effect.
And that's something I do want to get into at some point. Probably not this episode, but a proper diet for psychedelics, a proper ritual, like to the T. At least share our personal kind of schedules or itinerary for what you should do to get the most out of the experience and to reduce harm. I have nothing much to add on to the visual of effects. Like LSD, I would say, is pretty similar to the visual effects of shrooms, depending especially on the type of LSD, but things can be pretty geometric. You would see kind of fractals that are overlaid on the environment. Things would be breathing. You may have extra sensory perceptions like language or telepathy, for example, which I find really fascinating. So, and then auditorily, things are enhanced. So you would get very nuanced sounds and different, very detailed layers of sounds. So that's why listening to the right type of music is quite beneficial. for these experiences. And the exact music that I recommend, I'll go into in that episode where I go over what to do ritualistically. But just knowing that, music is important for the psychedelic journey because it's going to be enhanced. So yeah, just in general, this thing just enhances different things in all of our senses, our eyesight, our ears, and our heart and our soul and our brain. Um, and I know that the different ideas and realizations, and this is where we can get into the benefits. We know how it feels now. Like, what about the benefits? And I think the benefits of this can be really great for finding your true self, healing from previous wounds and trauma, looking at things from a different perspective. I've used it for very entrepreneurial pursuits where I've used the medicine to think of ideas differently, think of businesses, for example. And I've used it to battle inner demons too. Roots of depression, for example, or go over and heal previous trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and remember, if that's what's coming up, a lot of times those things come up to come out. Like when we suppress things, they really have a tendency to stay within our energetic field. So one of the powers of the medicine can be to bring out our most suppressed traumas or deep feelings that we're trying not to look at. But actually, the best thing you could do is let them up and out instead of trying to hold them in.
Go through them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to highlight again that thing about like the intensity of sound and experience. So one thing that I've found to be a very important realization with this is that because when you're that sensitive, you find that like the way that you treat people and the way that other people treat you has such a profound effect on your energetic field and their energetic field. And you realize within that's actually always the case. And so one of the lessons that I've received from the medicines is that words hold great power and use them wisely. And
wow, that's profound.
I said it in the first episode, but the first most important lesson that the mushrooms taught me was to be kind and to always be kind.
Wow.
And if I ever forget that, I always give myself a little that's not kind. More like a
wow.
Just a reminder, it's like I don't ever want to project that energy out into the world. And this doesn't mean like, being a pushover or always agreeing with everybody or not speaking up for your own truth. More so, it just means doing that with kindness, doing whatever you're doing with kindness. And I think this kind of gets into the intention of why we're doing this as a whole. So I think that message and being able to tap into that message in this kind of like almost instantaneous way is an incredibly powerful tool for personal growth and like global transformation.
Agreed. Yeah.
Not only
changing
that, but
society starts with changing yourself.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that I've found kind of goes along with that is like real respect and reverence for nature. And I think that's the other reason why we're experiencing this psychedelic renaissance right now, is because we desperately need to get back to that reverence for nature, because if we kill it, we kill us. That's how this goes, people.
Yeah. A common theme is getting the understanding that everything is one, right? That we're all one unit.
Mm-hmm.
We're all one with an equal to nature. And it's no coincidence that people that dabble with psychedelics are generally hippies or people that care about nature.
Yeah, or at least kind of open people.
Open to the possibility. Yeah.
I've
of like,
seen a wide variety of demographics who play with this type of thing, but
yeah, as a
um,
general principle. Yeah.
rarely have I seen people who are really deep into psychedelics and who are also like cruel or mistreating people or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but it is a
Yep.
multiplier. So if somebody really has a lot of those demons within, sometimes they just get amplified and multiplied. So like it can go dark with people. Like it doesn't taking psychedelics is not going to make you into a better person automatically. Although
Not at all.
I would say that it has had that effect for me. I wouldn't
Yeah,
guarantee
that's where
that.
integration is important. It's about
Yeah.
integration. You can be all lovey-dovey during a trip and have all these great realizations and ideas and truths revealed to you, but the hard part and the most important part is actually spending the next weeks to months to a year integrating those new ideas into your life. And that's where 99% of people falter. So a small percent of people take psychedelics, and an even smaller percent of those people actually integrate. And I think will make a far greater effect. And that's something we can do with the show is teaching people how to properly integrate. And this is something that I struggle with. This is something that I can get definitely better at. I find that a lot of my behavioral changes do fizzle over time, and that
Mhm.
I need to be better with integrating the experiences and not just being a one-time thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and kind of going along with that, I would say one of the traps that I've fallen into is like wanting to go back again and again and again uh,
Yeah,
before kind of doing all that integration work.
yeah, yeah. And which brings me like, I was just thinking before when you were talking, like, where do ideas even come from? These ideas that the medicine is giving us, where are they coming from? And this is something that I've always believed. I believe that ideas come from an external source, right? I
Mhm.
believe that ideas are already out there and that we're simply tuning into it, right? And this has to do with consciousness. And I think that our consciousness is always tuning into a particular waking frequency. And this is dependent on the type of brain waves there are physically going on in the brain and just the type of energetic mindset that you're in will determine the type of ideas that come to you. If you're on lower vibrations, for example, then you're going to get lower vibratory thoughts and feelings,
Mhm.
and this, vice versa. So I think that what psychedelics do is they increase, turn the knob on our ability to change our frequency. And these medicines, they help uplift our frequency and uplift our energy and our perception. And what they're doing is they're allowing us to tune into a different radio station, a different station where that's not normally accessible to you, and where you're getting all these new ideas, novel ideas and thoughts and truths. And I think that it's important to, you know, at least write some of those things down. So later on, you can revert back to those things and still get benefit from those ideas.
Mhm. Yeah, at this point, I guess I'm over 20 years into my period of psychedelic exploration, and one thing I wish is that I had done more record keeping about it because I've had all these amazing experiences, and a lot of them I can recall and tell the stories of, but some of them I just kind of slipped away because I didn't integrate it properly or take notes about the experience. So I'd say like to one way to really enrich this process for yourself is to keep that intention and take notes and bring back the stories of your adventures.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
That's a
So
note.
we,
That's a note for myself as well.
yeah. Yeah. So we talked about what it will feel like, a few benefits. Um, hmm.
So
Now
just to
there's, yeah, it
recap.
all depends what you want to use it for. Whatever you want to use it for, it will help you
Mhm.
with.
Yeah, I was about to say that same
It's
thing.
like a hammer, you know, it's a tool that you can use You can either use it to hit something or build a house,
What is it? It's a very versatile tool, though.
Yes, and
I
it's
was
very
like,
powerful as
what's
well.
the proper tool metaphor? I don't know. It's a very versatile tool.
It's I would say it's pretty much like
It's a pen.
it's like it's super powerful. I mean, like it's something that can do great good and great harm, like a mighty sword.
I think
You
that's
can use it to
too.
do great good or great harm.
Yeah, that's one way to see it, I suppose. I feel like the sword is a little bit too sharp, but it does have
Yeah,
that
yeah,
edge
it's
to
more
it.
gentle than that. It's more like a
It does
tool.
have the
Like I
edge.
wouldn't use a sword normally as a tool. It's way more gentle and nourishing and motherly. Exactly, I think, but it's
I
yeah,
think
that's an interesting question.
there's more consideration about this. I was saying it's a pen because it's like
Yeah,
you can
you can
there's
write
this
any
like
type of
creative
reality.
aspect to it, but there's
Yeah, well, what it does, it erases the slate, right? That's what psychedelics do. It's a great brain reset. And what it does, it creates a blank slate. Actually, here's an analogy that you might appreciate since you're into skiing and snowboarding. Is the way this is what I answer to a lot of when people ask me what it would do to you. Is I would say, imagine your how many decades of existence you've been here, and you've fallen into certain thought patterns. You think about things in a very similar way, at least through the years, and
Mhm.
those specific thought patterns have hardened. Those paths of thought have cemented in, right? So it's almost like when you're on a going down a ski slope over and over for like 25 years on end, and over time it creates a larger and larger divot into the snow. And when it's time for behavior change, or when somebody, your friend or your spouse, tells you like, hey, you got to change, you got to do this instead of this, and you say, okay, I want to change, I love you, I want to try to change, I know something's bad for me, like I'm smoking or something, I'm drinking, I know I want to change. But when it comes time to make that change, it's really difficult to build a new path in the snow when those existing paths are already so cemented in. So what the psychedelics do is it creates a whole new, fresh slate of snow where you are free now during the 6 hours to choose any type of thought pattern that you so wish to do. And I really hope and pray that it's something of love and kindness, but it allows you to go down certain patterns of thought and consciousness that aren't readily available to you, and uh, quite freely. Like it just sort of lubricates the neurotransmitters in such a way where you can choose any way you want.
So you're saying it's like a bluebird powder day for the mind.
Yes, exactly. Fresh powder.
Fresh powder, go whichever way you want. I like that idea
Yep.
of connecting areas of the brain that don't ordinarily connect
Yeah.
with
Well,
each other.
they've done fMRI studies where people have taken different psychedelics like shrooms and LSD, and they map the heat maps and electrical maps of the brain and see what's going on.
Hmm.
It's very similar. Interestingly enough, it's very similar to um, the effects that a Buddhist mind can have. A great meditating monk would have in the same fMRI machine.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of creative people tend to be more open to the experience of psychedelics.
Yeah,
Um,
and vice versa. Like I became more in touch with my creativity after using the substance that I probably innately
mm,
had but was suppressing. But I find myself to be, I find that it works both ways. Like the medicine really enhances my creativity.
definitely. Yeah, they really are creativity enhancers, and I do think that idea of connecting different areas of the brain that don't ordinarily speak as much is a good metaphor to think about with that.
Yep. One thing we can't forget to cover is, of course, harm reduction.
Hmm.
I really think it's important that people know their own yellow and red flags before the experience. They make sure that they do plenty of homework and research. One website that's trustworthy, where I would suggest spending a lot of time on, and I'll include this website in the show notes. It's erowid.org, erowid.org. That is a great resource to find information on different medicines and substances on all sides of the spectrum. And it'll give you lots of good information of trip reports, what not to mix it with, what to mix it with, different types of chemistry, and adverse effects, and things that wouldn't go well together with it. I think it's important that people know their own mental health history and know if there's any family history of mental health, specifically something like schizophrenia, for example, that, it's rare, but it does happen. There's risks involved. So people have been known to trigger schizophrenic events, even people without any previous mental history issues. It's been shown that psychedelics have been known to bring that out in some people. It's really important not to mix anything else with it, especially something like SSRIs or any other types of substances like alcohol with the medicine as well, or any type of prescription drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say particularly important with that is the mental health thing. I think that's kind of one of the most dangerous things, especially
Yeah, it's probably the most important
LSD.
thing with the psychedelic.
I was going to say with LSD, the thing about LSD is such a small amount is so incredibly powerful. So
yeah, it's very humble.
When people, some people have these bad experiences with it because it can be really easy, especially if it's liquid, to accidentally take a whole lot.
And just for context for people that are listening, a standard street dose is about 100 micrograms. So that's not, make sure that you don't confuse that with milligrams. So it's like 1/100th of a 1,000th of a drop. It's a very small amount.
Very small amount, yeah. And sometimes people accidentally take quite a bit more than that, and that can really mess up your circuitry. So it's like that's a powerful medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal experience with this has been that I've taken a couple times. I feel like I've been a little bit on the edge of what may have been a safe or reasonable dose of LSD, and I remember having the thought like, oh, this is what it's like to be an insane person. Now I understand,
100%. Actually, this is funny. The first time I bought LSD, some guy gave it to me in college in like a sugar cube form, and he put a droppers into the sugar cube or had it prepared that way. I can't remember, but it's very easy to put an extra few drops, And he told me, he's like, I don't know why you guys want this stuff. You're pretty much going to have schizophrenia for the next 6 hours. And then that's the first thing he said to me. And not the first thing he said to me, but I heard that for the first time right before going on this first experience. So that was kind of funny. But
not helpful, by the way.
Not helpful, dude. Don't say that to people. But yeah, I've had other experiences later in the future, many years later, where I'm like, oh, okay, this is what schizophrenia feels like.
Yeah, a lot of LSD can really,
but that's particularly
really
on that's on very high doses, and that's what happens when you take it quite often. You can let your grip of reality kind of slip.
Yeah, and so that point that you just put out there as well, like if you're around people who are on psychedelics, like really kind of be careful about how you treat them and what you say to them, because I've heard a number of stories of like that, of just like somebody saying one wrong thing to a person who's really tripping, and it totally ruins the experience for them.
Yeah,
it's just an inconsiderate thing to do. So like and I found that especially people who aren't experienced with psychedelics are more likely to do stuff like that to somebody who is.
100%. But I can also look at it from the other side too, right? I can also use it for good, those powers for good. Like as a guide, I might say something that I know is going to have like really piercing effect on somebody, but like for a good reason, like, you know what I mean? Like it's not in a harsh way, in a loving way, but
Right. Yeah.
it's a very potent thing that I would say to that person. But you were saying, go ahead.
Um, I lost it. What was I saying?
Um, something about, being very careful of what kind of words you use, and that they can have very powerful effects, especially you were talking about words that you can use to really throw people off or throw them for a loop, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's about right. I guess I was just saying that people who have not done psychedelics before,
Oh
or
yeah,
especially
yeah.
people who
People that
have
are
been
inexperienced tend to make that
drinking,
mistake.
be
Yeah,
careful going
drinking at a
around
party. Yeah,
people who are drinking while you're on psychedelics,
yeah. I
because
tend
it's
to avoid those
totally,
people completely.
yeah, it's like the
Opposite
opposite
vibes.
end of the spectrum.
Yeah. So for people that are familiar with alcohol and alcohol culture, psychedelics are literally the opposite.
Pretty much, yeah.
uh, but yeah, I think that it's important that people, go into these experiences very wisely, and know what kind of preconceived notions you're bringing into it. And this has to do with harm reduction. You want to mitigate the chances of having a bad trip, or having some sort of emergency happen to you. So that goes back to set and setting. It goes back to knowing yourself. Oh, one thing I actually advise people before they take a dose for the first time, I tell them to lay down in the dark or blindfolded. And I recommend them a psychedelic playlist, for example, or something they would use in like a John Hopkins study. And I tell them to just lay down with yourself for 4 or 5 hours straight, and just see if you can handle that, you know? And if
Hmm.
you can't handle that, then psychedelics aren't for you yet, until you can sort of handle that with great confidence.
Hmm. That's cool. I've never heard that method.
Yeah, I just sort of made it up, but I think that's very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people, yeah, I would say most or many people do not follow that advice.
Nope. 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 Not at all. Actually, in a group session I was just in, there was one gentleman there that had a very hard experience, right? Very difficult experience. And you know, he went through some emotional trauma during those few hours. And came out on the other end knowing what he needed to do, right? Righteous things. But he went through quite a bit of a trip. And he was concerned, like, oh my God, was this like part of the medicine? Was this supposed to happen? Right. And I told him, like, dude, if you just came here without any substance and just lay down with us, listening to this music, and just listen to your body and thoughts and feelings and just watched it, you'd get the same type of realizations without any substance needed. So I think more people would get a lot of benefit from doing that. Actually, it's free. You can do it yourself, and it's
Mhm.
safe. Nothing bad can happen. It's probably a good idea to spread that message. Actually,
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good technique. I think also it's just like, are you in a place in your life right now where you're prepared to sit with yourself and anything that may come
yeah,
up within
yeah,
yourself?
yeah. And also considering harm reduction, like how often are you taking this thing? You know, recommended it should be probably like once or twice a year. Or at least if you're going to take it more often, like quarterly, or having some sort of regimented interval of span of time, so you're not over abusing the medicine. I do think it has an inbuilt safety mechanism where you can't overdose on them, and that if you take them too often, their potency reduces and the realizations you get reduces. So it's kind of an inbuilt mechanism that kind of makes you like kind of back off of it for a while.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good at telling you that they'll
Yeah,
they'll let you know if you're doing it too much.
the
Like
medicine does
I
let you
do
know.
I do small medium doses on a regular basis, but I rarely do a big journey anymore. I have a wife and a 2-year-old daughter, so we're not I just don't have time to be a, you know, time
Makes sense.
traveling too much.
Yeah, makes sense. I tend to do very little, if at all, micro doses or small doses. I tend to just go for very high macro doses, but not as frequent.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's a personal thing, you know. I really think
Yeah, it's where I'm
coming
at this stage,
coming
you know?
back to
Yeah.
that idea of like really taking it as an adventure in self-reliance and self-knowledge. You know, like there's a lot of ideas about how and when and, you know, specific ways to do it, but I really believe like it's such a personal decision, and there are infinite different ways of exploring your own consciousness with your body, your mind, your spirit, and these medicines. So yeah, like tune it into what it is that you want and need, and what you're creating for yourself.
Very well said.
So anything else, Raj?
No, I just wanted to, I think we hit everything we wanted to talk about. So in summary, we talked about what psychedelics feel like, um, what types of benefits, and just an overview of everything. Some benefits that you would get from psychedelics, such as LSD or psilocybin, and an overview of harm reduction as well. So I think we hit everything we need to hit today.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll say just as a final wrap up, the most important things to remember if you're choosing to do psychedelics for the first time, or any time that you do them, are your intentions, the set and setting, and then allowing yourself to surrender. Like once you've taken it, you're on the ride.
Yes, absolutely. Just let go with the flow, enjoy yourself. Do not fight the medicine. It's way more powerful than you are.
Yes, indeed. So in line with one of the messages that I have gotten from the medicines, I want to reiterate that words have great power and to use them wisely. I'll send us off with a little bit of a prayer or affirmation. One thing for me, psychedelics have very much been a journey of discovering my spirituality and my connection with creator, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to be talking about that subject quite a lot with this podcast.
For sure.
And I think it's
Yeah.
a very important thing to be talking about.
Yeah. Just for context for people listening, like I considered myself originally an atheist, and I went a few years becoming an agnostic. But through psychedelics, I discovered the divine, and I do consider myself a very strong believer and becoming more of a strong believer in God day by day, actually, which got triggered from gifted to me from a psychedelic experience. So I do have that to thank.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, me
thank you,
too.
tabs of LSD. Yep.
And
November 2019. You know,
nice. That's pretty recent. You've gone through a
yeah,
big
it's
change.
pretty recent. Yeah.
It sent me on a spiritual path much earlier than that, I would say. And I'm gonna get further into what that
Yeah.
should look like.
Yep.
But I also did have friends and family members who kind of brought me along in that direction. And also, I want to say in that regard is that I consider it to be very important to connect with a higher power of your own understanding.
Yeah. Yourself.
Yes, exactly. So we don't have any types of dogma,
Yeah.
inclusion,
Just
exclusion,
get in tune
energy
with
at
your body.
all.
You know, use the medicine to get in tune with all parts of your body, you know, level by level. You don't have to go by the chakra system or anything like that. Just listen to your gut, listen to your heart, listen to your mind, and just go from there.
Hmm. Yeah, so that has been a very transformative path for me. And with this idea of words. Words are powerful vibrations. So we're literally changing our physiology with the words that we speak. And not only that, but that of the people around us. Imagine if somebody in the room with you speaks some really angry, aggressive words. They've literally changed your chemistry. You can feel that transformation with those words, and it sticks around for quite a while. And it's the same with kind and loving words. We can have that effect of literally changing our own bodies, our own physiology with the words that we speak. So I want to share with you guys this affirmation that I've been using that has really helped me to manifest some quite remarkable things into my life. So this one I got from Tony Robbins.
I'm a huge fan.
I heard a wild story, actually. Okay. Tony Robbins was on Mike Tyson's podcast talking about a DMT experience. Look it up. Anyways, I got this affirmation from Tony Robbins. I'm not sure if it's his or if he got it from somebody else, but he used it to manifest quite a remarkable transformation in his life. And I've actually been doing the same thing. I like to do it when I'm out in the ocean. But it goes like this. God's wealth is flowing to me in ever increasing abundance. All of my needs, goals, and desires are fulfilled because I am one with God, and God is everything. Once again, God's wealth is flowing to me in ever increasing abundance. All of my needs, goals, and desires are fulfilled because I am one with God, and God is everything. God is everything.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
So yeah, I feel my body is a little bit different after uttering those words, and I
feel different after
also
hearing
been
those
helpful
words
for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it. I have internalized that and found it to be very true.
I know that you have seen some quite magical things happen in your life recently. So yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. All right. Yeah. Peace.
We will see you next time. Peace, everybody.